Hey guys, good evening. I hope you are doing well and enjoying this start to your summer. If you are not out of school yet, I hope you are very, very close. I am coming at you today with the results from the 2023 first ever advisor survey that we've done for the past couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I'm having some kind of weird technical difficulty and my camera just will not work. So hopefully that's okay, but I wanted to get these results to you, and so I didn't want to let that get in the way. Okay, so to get started, just a little bit about the survey. So we did run it from May 11th to May 31st, and I think that's partially the reason why we only had 166 participants. I don't think that that's a very good size representation of the advisor community at large. Obviously, as organized advisor, I don't have insight into every journalism program that there is. But even within my audience, I think 166 is not a very large amount of people that normally participate in stuff. And so I think that that's my fault for doing it at a really busy time during yearbook distribution and the end of the school year. So I fully take the blame for that. And I have made notes for next year to make that to do this again, but make it come out a little bit earlier. So my apologies about that. But I also think that even though 166 participants isn't a huge amount, I think we did get a really good sampling of advisors from all different types of backgrounds and programs and stuff like that. So, and I still think the information is super useful and interesting to look at. So to give you an idea of who participated in the survey, we have people from all different types of campuses. So we have a large representation from high schools, but also a pretty good representation from elementary and middle schools. Also quite a few K-12 schools, which I did lump in with elementary, but a lot of the people that participated specified K through 12. And then we have an overwhelming majority of public schools and then some private and charters. But I think that's reflective of just schools in general. Like there's more public schools than there are private and charters. So that makes sense to me. All right, and then when it comes to enrollment, we have a pretty good skew across the board. We have some really, really small schools, some really, really large schools, and then we have all over the place in the middle. So you'll probably find yourself somewhere in this range. But I think that this does represent the majority of journalism teachers across the board outside of my community and the participants of the survey. All right, so then we had representation from all across the country. We have people from most states, and then we have a good distribution of advisors from suburban communities as well as rural and urban. The majority are coming from suburban communities, and the majority are coming from Texas. My audience, as I am in Texas, started here, and so that also kind of makes sense why maybe the majority of advisors that participated are from Texas. Okay, so now about you guys as advisors. This is actually what I thought was one of the most interesting sections. Okay, starting with race and ethnicity, you can see that the majority of advisors that participated were Caucasian, and the majority of advisors overwhelmingly were female, which I think is interesting because I think that also reflects the profession of teaching in general. Okay, and then when looking at age, we have advisors all across the board. So we have some brand new teachers in their 20s that are advising publications, and then we have a large majority in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then we have 3% in their 60s, and I was really excited to see that. I was hoping that we would have some advisors that participated that have been teaching for a long time. Personally, I love talking to advisors that have been doing it for decades. They have seen it all. Every point of stress, they have been there, and they just have such wisdom to share. And then I'm also really excited to see, brand new teachers take on school publications. I think that that's very exciting. It can be pretty stressful, but I'm excited to see them taking it on. All right, so then when it comes to the teaching credential that they have either in addition to journalism or as their background, no surprise here, overwhelming majority is English. I was a little bit surprised to see that the art chunk only took 4%. I thought that, and based on what I hear from advisors I talk to, it seems that the majority of teachers come from an English or an art background, but it looks like it's kind of split between art, business, CTE, music, theater. Like those are all kind of similar amounts. A couple of people didn't have to be certified because they worked at like a charter school. Other chunk was all over the place, from a paraprofessional to a parent volunteer to a librarian to all over the place kind of certifications. So I think that it's really interesting to see people's background. But if you are an aspiring journalism teacher, it looks like a good path for you would be to be certified in English and then work your way into a journalism position. Okay, so when it comes to the journalism credential from JEA, only 26 people actually answered this question, and so the majority of those have their CJE, with a couple having their MJE, and then the rest left it blank. My assumption is that they don't have a CJE or an MJE, which is totally fine. That doesn't mean that you're any better or worse of a journalism teacher because you have a credential, but I think it is a worthwhile venture if you are going to continue in the profession for a while. It adds credibility to your job. It validates your knowledge. It's just a very useful credential to have as a journalism teacher. So if you haven't looked into it yet, I definitely recommend that you do. Okay, so then we have our years spent advising. So the colors here, I've made the ones that have been advising for 5 or less years blue to kind of see how much new advisors represent the overall participants. So you can see it's over half, but we do have quite a bit that have been advising for 20 plus years. I can say from my perspective that there does seem to be really high turnover in the journalism advising industry, and I think that that's due to a lot of reasons. Particularly, it's a very difficult job and it's overwhelming. And if you don't have systems set up and you don't have support from admin or you don't have support from your publisher or whatever, it's very, very easy to just get overwhelmed and not want to do it anymore. And so that's actually one of my main missions with Organized Advisor, is to provide those tools to advisors in order to eliminate that overwhelm and make it possible for you to enjoy your job and teach it and do it for 20 plus years. So I'm glad to see that we do have a good chunk of teachers that have done it for a significant amount of time. Okay, so then we asked, how well equipped do you feel to perform the responsibilities of advising student publications? I was really pleased with this answer. Considering we have a lot of newer advisors, to have the average answer be 4 out of 5, I felt like that was really good, and that makes me excited to say that advisors do feel well equipped. That means that publishers are doing their job, admins are doing their job, there are resources to help learn how to do this crazy job, and so that made me really happy to see. A little bit lower, though, we have how knowledgeable advisors feel about the legal aspects of advising student publications, and that was about a 3, kind of right in the middle. And so I think that that is an area where we can grow as a community. I think that there are a lot of legal liabilities that advisors hold and they have no idea about. The Student Press Law Center, SPLC, is one of the best places to go to learn about the legal aspects of advising student publications, but also there's just a lot to know. And so that's another reason why I think getting your CJE or MJE is a really good idea, because in studying for those tests, you learn about the legal aspects and they put an emphasis on that section. So I think that if you're a new advisor and you haven't looked into the legal aspects of advising, that's definitely a good thing for you to explore maybe this summer. Okay, so then when it comes to the publications that you guys are advising, I think this was super interesting. So the majority of advisors do yearbook only, which means that there is another teacher or another adult in the building that advises the other publications, either broadcast or newspaper. I did lump together newspaper, news mag, and all the different formats of newspaper into just newspaper because it was all over the place. And then some teachers, are in charge of all the student media. So they do yearbook, newspaper, broadcast, print and online, social media, marketing, like they're in charge of a lot. And this I think was really interesting because when correlated with the yearbook stipend, it wasn't always a 1-to-1. So just because there is an advisor that was in charge of it all doesn't mean that they got a bigger stipend. Sometimes they just got one stipend for all the publications, and then some schools it looked like they got a different stipend for every publication that they advised. So again, it's all over the place. There was a big chunk that don't receive a stipend. So if you're in that 14%, I would take this slide to your administration and talk about how other journalism advisors across the country receive anywhere from $1,000 to over $5,000 for advising student publications. It helps with that overwhelm. When you're working extra time, you're advising all these student publications, and you're not making any extra coins, it makes it a lot harder. So even though like $1,000, for instance, across the paychecks over the course of your school year isn't that much money, it's better than nothing. And I absolutely think that if you're doing something like yearbook or newspaper, you are absolutely spending time outside your contract time working on it, and you should be compensated for that time. So with that, we asked on average, how many hours per week do you spend working on student publications outside of your contract time? So like I said, if you're doing yearbook or newspaper and you are spending time outside of your contract time, you deserve to be compensated for those hours. So as you can see, it's kind of all over the place, anywhere from 1 to 10 plus hours per week. But some of you, that 3%, said you don't do any outside your contract time. And I just want to talk to you. I want to know how you do it. I want to know how you have so much willpower and work-life balance, because I want to learn from you. But the majority of people are working between 3 and 5 hours per week outside of their contract time on student publications. I think that is absolutely reflective of the industry as a whole. And I would say that during deadline time, I was working 10 plus hours over and above my contract time, especially towards that final deadline. So those hours definitely deserve to be paid. And if you're not getting a stipend for it, you need to go and advocate for yourself and ask your admin why. Okay, and so then a little bit about yearbook vendors. You can see there's a pretty good split across vendors between the big 4 companies as well as some of the smaller companies. Something I thought was interesting that I have noticed as a trend is only 1% right now, but I think there's an upswing in people looking at self-publishing. So there's a lot of resources that the yearbook companies can offer you in terms of education, lesson plans, support, design software, lots of things that you need to be able to create a yearbook. But some advisors have found in recent years that they can go and get their book printed through either a print shop or other ways of digital print on demand options and save quite a bit of money. Of course, it depends on your program and the resources that you need. If you're a new advisor, I would not recommend that because you are on your own and you don't have that support, and it can be a really big thing to take on and self-publish, but it might be an option for certain advisors. So when it comes to the number of yearbooks ordered, I thought that this would be an interesting metric to look at, but honestly, I wish that I had asked this differently. I wish that I had asked the percentage of books sold in comparison to your enrollment. That's a more useful metric. This doesn't tell us much on its own. There's so many factors that go into the number of yearbooks ordered. If you're a private school and it's included in tuition, or if you work really hard to do marketing and sell a bunch, or if your sell price is really low or really high. So while this is interesting to look at, I don't actually think it's as useful as I intended. Again, noted for next year. Okay, so when it comes to yearbook cost, this was really interesting. So 85% of the participants didn't respond to it. They left this one completely blank, which all the questions are optional, but it's interesting that this one was left blank in particular. And when people did answer it, the range was from $16 per book to over 100, like 115, I think was the max. So I didn't even put it into a pie chart because it's just too skewed with such few participants actually answering. And I think that the question might have been confusing because I think they might have been referring to their sale price, not their cost for production, because I don't think that it's typical for the print cost of a single yearbook to cost over $100. If it is, you need to talk to your publisher, but I don't think that that's typical, and so I didn't want the answers to be skewed because maybe my question was confusing. So my conclusion is that advisors don't know. The fact that 85% of people didn't respond makes me think that you're just not sure of what your actual cost is, and I think it's really important for advisors to ask those questions. I think that your billing should be completely transparent. You should know what you're paying per book. You should know exactly the impact of all of your decisions. So if you decide to do something fancy on your cover, how much does that raise the price per book? I don't think that you can responsibly price your book without knowing what it cost you. You can't compare costs from different vendors without knowing what the bottom line is. And so I think that, I challenge advisors, if you don't know, if you were one of the 85% that participated but didn't answer this, go look at your bill, look at your final bill, make sure you get an itemized invoice and that you know what you're paying for. It's a little cheesy, but one of the phrases that we learn in elementary school is that knowledge is power. And without having that knowledge, you don't have the power to go and negotiate or look at other vendors. So it's really important as an advisor to be knowledgeable about what you're paying for. Okay, so then we asked about your favorite and least favorite things about your yearbook vendor. So I went through and I pulled the most common themes that I saw across the board. So the least favorite things about their yearbook publisher was that they don't have a rep, either a local rep or they don't have a rep this year, and high turnover within reps. They have received damaged books or they've had quality control issues. either with bad coloring from the inks, torn pages or ink smears, shipping damage. They have poor communication, either from the plant or the rep themselves. The turnaround time is too slow. The cost of the book is too high. The educational support is lacking. I think this one's really important for new advisors. They definitely need that educational support, and if they don't feel like they know where to start, that can be really frustrating. The graphic designer for the cover wasn't good. I didn't expect to see this one multiple times, but I saw a couple, enough to add it here. So, having that graphic support I think is also super important. Lack of options in design software. This one I saw a lot. So a lot of times people are using the publisher software and they feel very limited by it. So whether the feature that they need isn't there yet or they just don't know how to do it, they feel like the options aren't available in the design software they're using. Or the design software is glitchy. That one was probably the most common comment. It was that the software is glitchy. Shameless plug here. If you are using your publisher software, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if you're interested in using InDesign and you want to learn how to use it, I just released a course about how to use InDesign. So if you're interested, I'll drop the link to that in the description box below. Okay, some other comments were low quality proofs. So if you are receiving paper proofs for your book, they should be on the same paper that the book is printed on. And if you're receiving paper proofs that are look like they were printed on a Xerox machine, that's a problem. So make sure that you don't have low quality proofs. That's definitely an issue. Or that your company or your rep just isn't very helpful. The communication is non-existent. I put this as a separate one because I think that poor communication is one thing, but non-existent, the fact that that was one of the words used, I was like, that's a big deal. No local rep. Some companies just don't have local reps and they do a great job taking care of you without one, but some advisors prefer a local rep, so that can be one of their negatives. They have some pressure to meet an early deadline, which kind of goes around with turnaround time, but if they feel pressure to meet that early deadline, that can be not a very good feeling also. Lack of budget transparency. Like I said, you should know exactly what you're paying for. Surprises on the bill. I think this is funny that they put on the survey, they put it in quotes, and I was like, that's a really nice way of putting it, but I would be not very happy about surprises on my bill. Website lags and crashes. I think that this goes along with the design software, but the wording that they used was website, and so I left it because it might be referring to the sales website for parents to buy yearbooks, so I wasn't sure, but I went ahead and left it because I did see it a couple of times. Layouts are outdated, which I think is a valid concern, especially for new advisors, but you can also create your own layouts, so I wouldn't rely on those necessarily. And then the software that they have doesn't work on iPads or Chromebooks. Very valid concern because most schools that are one-to-one only have iPads or Chromebooks. But InDesign doesn't work on iPads or Chromebooks either, so it's kind of just the nature of the beast with graphic design. And then the last thing is that the training is either repetitive or too basic, which valid concern. Okay, so now let's talk about some favorite things about their yearbook publisher. So that they have informative and helpful workshops. Good, glad to hear it. High energy speakers at workshops. That's wonderful. That's one of my main things is when I go to a workshop, I want to bring the fun. I do everything in my life with fun at the forefront. And so if you are a speaker that just drones through a PowerPoint, the irony is that that's what I'm doing right now, but I don't do that at workshops. So if you just drone through a PowerPoint, kids are falling asleep. You need to bring the energy. And then great resources, that's wonderful. So educationally, I'm assuming good resources, a local rep, as you can see, opposite of the negatives. Quick turnaround is really important. That goes along with this trend I'm seeing in the self-publishing or the print on demand. They're able to turn around books really quickly. The quality is a concern sometimes, so I would definitely get a print sample, make sure that it's something that is up to your standards. There's a lot of different ways to print things these days, and a quick turnaround doesn't always mean good. It could be you get what you pay for and it's too fast, and so you want to definitely evaluate your options and see what's best for your school. All right, the cover artists. We have some really, really great cover artists in the journalism yearbook community, and so I can definitely see that being one of the favorite things too. Software integration, a couple of companies have some really great integrations with other software, so that can be really good to aid in creating your yearbook. They are attentive. The sales and marketing support is great, so we love to see that. And then easy to use software. So as you can see, software is big. Like, you don't need to pick your yearbook company based off of any one thing. I don't think that that's ever a good idea. I think by and large, they all print ink on paper. And so there's other things that make that buying decision. It could be the rep, it could be the software, it could be the support and resources, but all of those things weighed together is how you should make your final decision. And software is usually a really big part of that. All right. Then we had a ton of comments that the favorite thing about their yearbook company is their rep. And I completely agree. Like I said, by and large, they all print ink on paper. They're pretty much the same product. And what matters and what makes things different is the rep. And so they use specific words that I think were really helpful. So when you're looking for a rep, or you are a rep, or you are looking at a new company and evaluating their rep, these are things that I think you should look for. So people said that they want a rep that is knowledgeable, helpful, or they have a rep that is educational, friendly, responsive, supportive, encouraging. They can count on them, and they advocate for me, which I thought was a really interesting one. Like, maybe at the plant, they feel like the rep goes and advocates for their project if things are running behind or something. And then they help share the workload. I think that that's also really good, because the job of a rep, I mean, in my mind, I've never been a rep, but is technically to be the liaison between me and the plant and sell me the book, sell me the product. But all of these things have nothing to do with sales. And I think that that is what makes a good rep great, is that they will jump in and like show you how to edit a photo if they need to. And they will educate you and your staff. And, you know, that's going above and beyond and giving you that extra support is what, for me, makes the decision about who I'm going to print with. Okay, and then about the portrait vendor, some least favorite things is that they are pricey and not transparent with their prices. So that can receive some backlash from parents. Obviously, that is not a good thing. I think that there should be transparency in all things. That's part of the reason why we do this survey. Their flash photography of large groups, the photos are awful. So bad photography. The quality of their photos isn't great. Again, bad photography. I've had my yearbook staff retake team photos before because their photos weren't good. Communication and changing of reps. Inconsistency with their sport photography. Mistakes in spelling and placement of student at times. They're unorganized and have messed some things up. They don't have a portal to access photos quickly or keep track of who has and who hasn't had a photo. The continued human errors dealing with portraits, outdated storage software. I highlighted this one because I liked the wording of it, that errors are errors and they happen with any company. That's the nature of doing business as human beings. But if the errors you're continuing to see are careless mistakes, then that tells you there's issues within their internal systems and the quality control isn't catching them. So I think that that was a really good way to word it, because I really don't care, to be honest. Like, personally, I don't care if a company makes a mistake. What matters more to me is how it's handled and how it's communicated and if it's done in a timely manner. So I think that was a really good way of wording their grievance. This company lost our photos 2 years in a row, also poor editing of the photos and almost zero communication, not to mention he doesn't format the photos for Yearbook. Losing photos is a huge deal. Like, that is not okay. If that's literally your one job. So that's definitely a problem. Sports team photos are always a challenge. The quality is definitely not great. So we're seeing some themes here with quality of photos, communication, and errors that are not being fixed correctly. Okay, and then favorite things about photography companies are that they are easy to work with, that they attend graduation and they share the candid photos with the yearbook. Great. They work directly with Yearbook. Great. They should be in contact with you. If you're just receiving photos and you don't ever hear from the photography rep or anything like that, that's a problem. You should definitely know who that rep is, have a good communication with them, have a good relationship with them. They are friendly, prompt service, always tries to do anything we ask for, lower prices than competitors, doesn't require senior fee to take photo, online proofs and ordering, photo shipped directly to the student or parent. That was a really long response, but it hit on so many of the things that were echoed in other people's responses, so I just put the whole thing in there. But friendly is really important. One of my complaints that I've heard in the past from my own students was that the photographers who were taking their photos, like the underclassmen ones at the school, were really rude. And you're working with kids, you're in the kid business, and I think it's important that the photographers understand that. And so if your photographers are friendly, then that can go a long way. They are organized, timely, and professional, delivers a CD and a link. I think that's a really good point. I think most companies have moved to doing a link only, which I totally understand. That's my preference to receive also. But delivering a CD gives you an inherent backup without having to make your own backup. And so I think that that's just a really nice little touch to still do. They have an on-campus day for seniors. That's pretty standard, I think, but that's a good perk. They have fast, good quality, excellent customer service. They help train my students. That's huge. If you have professional photographers who are able to come and do a little workshop with your students or go on the sidelines at a game and help train your students on how to take better pictures, that is such a helpful, great resource to have. Good rep, good portal, generous contract package. I think that was a really good point. A lot of advisors don't know that you can negotiate your contracts with all vendors, and if you're in need of cameras or some sort of equipment, you can sometimes negotiate to have that included in your contract when you renew. And so that's definitely worth asking about and seeing what you can negotiate. Quick turnaround is always a good thing with portraits because you want to be able to have them put in your pages quickly. Great photos, obviously that's a good thing. My rep, of course, we love our reps. They are a local family-owned business. They are flexible and helpful. They know what it's like to work with publications on deadlines. That is huge. Flexible and helpful is everything. In the journalism world, things move fast, things change fast, and being able to adapt and help the advisor accordingly is everything. All right, that is it for our advisor survey. If there's anything that you think I should ask next year that you're curious about, please reach out and let me know. You can drop a comment below. You can shoot me an email. You can fill out the contact form on our website. They all go straight to my inbox. I hope that you found that as interesting as I did. I hope you have a great summer. And as always, if there's anything at all that we can help you with, please reach out. Everything we do comes directly from advisor requests, and I would love to be able to help you. So your wish is quite literally my command. Until next time, bye.